It's Pacers 2, Thunder 1 through 3 games of the finals. In game 3, what did the Pacers change? What went worse for the Thunder? How will it look heading into game 4? Coming up so soon, a crossover Locked On Pacers and Locked On Thunder to break it all down today.
You are Locked On NBA Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Happy Friday. Congrats on making it through another week. And the NBA Finals rolls on. Pacers 2, Thunder 1 after a fascinating new wrinkles galore game 3 in Indianapolis. And we've got a lot to talk about here in the way that Locked On only can do it. Crossing it over with Locked On Pacers and Locked On Thunder. I'm Tony East. I host Locked On Pacers. Here with me today, of course, for the fourth time now in a week, is Rylan Stiles of Locked On Thunder. We're in the same city. We're watching the same games. What a game Game 3 became, Rylan. I was not necessarily, I would say, surprised that the Pacers were able to respond because they're very good at that, but the method in which they did it, I don't think many saw coming.
Yeah, I don't think that the Pacers, anyone saw them playing this level of defense against Oklahoma City for the 48 minutes that they just absolutely hounded OKC. I thought that they not only stuck true to what we talked about in our crossover leading into Game 3 of making Shea play in a crowd, but off of getting the ball out of Shea's hands, they also recovered exceptionally well onto the Thunder's complementary pieces, and it forced them to get out of rhythm. And the offense just completely bogged down for OKC. In the last 5 and change, they didn't score but one field goal. Like, that was awful. And it's a large credit to Indiana and the way that they played defense.
Yeah, outside of J-Dub, who can do this like line drive to the rim floater thing that he hadn't done all series and then did like 7 times in that game, there wasn't a lot of just like stuff that looked unstoppable for OKC in a way that they had in game 2 with their offense flowing. 18 points in the fourth quarter was crazy, especially because the Thunder closed the third so strong. Going in, everybody thought, okay, there's momentum, right? They're playing well. They're shooting well in the game. Like, they might have this. And then I think they battled fine for the first like 6 minutes of the fourth, but they just kind of fell apart. And I think the Pacers defense deserves a lot of credit. Like, to put the face on it to me of 2 plays, it was very late in the game, the back-to-back plays where one, Myles Turner blocks to the Chet Holmgren 3 and then recovers to block him at the rim. And the very next play, Siakam gets switched on to Shea, stays down on him on the move, forces him to get off of it. By the time he gets it back, it's a bad contested shot. Pacers get the board. And those were in like 6 or 5 point game territory where shots were huge. Like, Rick Carlisle often calls that a 1-possession game, even though it's not, just because it's so close. You just never know. And they really locked them up there. They were so dialed into those little tiny details of defense that mattered in those plays. And it wasn't there all night, certainly, but that was the best defensive game they played this season. And there's lots of bench guys I want to get to individually. But what do you think of the way the Thunder are responding to this defense? Because like a lot's been made about their pass number per game being as low as it's been like at all this season. Are they playing into the Pacers' hands? Or are they not playing their way? What's going on here? Because the Pacers defense is doing a very good job.
Yeah, I think that they're not being as decisive and quick with the basketball as they have all season long. And I think that part of that is because of the speed and athleticism the Pacers are playing with right now on the defensive end. I think that they're forcing the issue for OKC. And I think that for the majority of Game 3, the Pacers look like the more desperate team, the team that had more intensity in an NBA Finals game. There's not really an excuse to not have that stuff, but Indiana certainly did. And Indiana flipped the script on OKC. Like, the way that they won this game was overcoming a poor shooting night, even at home, and getting and owning the paint on both ends. And they did that exceptionally well for Indiana. And OKC just had nowhere to go. They couldn't convert in the paint. They couldn't convert in the mid-range, and it cost them big time. But I do think that the lower level of passing from OKC is attributed to Indiana's defense.
I don't watch the game and feel like OKC's ball movement's like so bad. That's why it's so interesting to me that it's settled out this way. Maybe it's just because they move it way better in their best games, right? But I haven't been like, it's sticking, right? Like, the guys it ends up with is like who I think it should be with. I don't ever walk away feeling like that. I just think the Pacers have done a good job of that. And the other part of the fourth quarter I'll be curious to get your take on is it's now gone viral as a screenshot, but it was very noticeable in the game too, of like dead ball moment, Thunder, all their players, hands on the knees, wheeze in, catch your breath. And the Pacers have coined this now, the wear down effect of playing the Pacers and their speed and their tempo and their pressure. And the Thunder provide pressure too, to be clear. Was there a gassed element to you to this? Are people overthinking this because of it? Oh, if like had the Thunder won, no one would be talking about this. Like, how do you feel about their their late game execution in that way.
Yeah, they obviously did not execute well down the stretch of this game, and I think that it's a legit factor for SGA specifically. Whenever the Thunder did concede way too many switches, and the Pacers did a great job of getting Shea into every single action, to where he's having to work really hard defensively, harder than he typically does have to work on that end of the floor, which is affecting his offensive game, affecting his legs in a big way. The Thunder have to be better at fighting through those screens and not necessarily hiding Shea. But look, Shea is a good defender for what you would expect of a superstar with his usage rate, but he's not a attack defender. He's not even close to the guy who you would want out there on an island trying to stop Tyrese Haliburton, trying to stop the ball. You'd want Lou out there, you'd want Caruso out there, you'd want Kaysen out there. And the Pacers did a great job of finding that mismatch and forcing Shea to go from a help defender where he's excellent to a point of attack defender where he's not so great. And that did wear on him on the offensive end, as well as the fact that all game on the offensive end, Shea could not get clean shots. He had to work for every single shot attempt. He had to work for every opportunity to score. The Pacers forced him to play in that crowd and make tough shots. And Shea's an excellent scorer, so he still made tough shots. But those are the ones that you live with because of the wear down effect that you've mentioned. And that kind of ties into the passing we were talking about before. I agree that I don't think that the ball stopped for OKC. I don't think that they've just been putrid in terms of looking to pass. I think that the biggest notion that Indiana's done well is when you look at OKC and how they like to run these DHOs and how they like to pass and pitch off of screens. Indiana's blowing that stuff up right away to where that DHO with Hartenstein and with Chet, like that's not creating any advantages in terms of numbers, in terms of shot quality. And that's been a huge difference for OKC compared to the rest of the season.
Which is fascinating because the opposite just happened for the Pacers. I thought they needed to get more into that side-to-side stuff, use Turner as that fulcrum DHO guy, and that worked very well to get Haliburton going, and I presume would have been helpful for Turner had he not been under the weather and played a pretty poor game until late. But yeah, I totally agree with all that part of it. And Shea never saw daylight. I didn't get to talk about this enough on my own show because I've gone through the Mathurin stuff and the McConnell stuff and the 10,000 mini moments and the Stars being good. But Andrew Nembhard's defense was just awesome in game 3 on Shea. And that's the stuff he could do. He did that to Brunson in game 6 of that Knicks series. It's not all the time. Brunson torched him sometimes last year and at times this year, but he has a level that he can hit as a guard pest defender. People think of him as just a lockdown kind of guy, or he's pretty good against the Stars, and he is, but he's pretty pesty. He's learned stuff from McConnell in that way. He's kind of innate in that way, and you could really see it bothering to the extent Shea has ever bothered, right? You know what I'm saying? He's an MVP, but actually making him work harder for those points. And so even though he might still have whatever night he has, it adds up by the end of the game to something more challenging. And I thought, he only took 5 shots, but a very impactful game from Nembhard that kind of gets lost in the shuffle of all the many things they did defensively.
Yeah, and especially for him. I mean, you look at the fighting through foul trouble that the Pacers had to do this really the whole game. At halftime, there's 3 starters with 3 fouls. But also, the fourth quarter, Shea took 3 shots. That's his quarter. That's when you're supposed to close it out. And he got to play more in the fourth quarter than his typical rotation. They brought him in earlier because they took him out earlier in the third. And he can only get 3 shots up because of how uncomfortable Indiana was able to make him.
What other did anything tactically change to you defensively for the Pacers? Do you feel like this was just upped ability, the classic play better adjustment? I mean, I felt like they did better fighting through screens. Tyrese Haliburton talked about that himself. He mentioned being up at the level a little bit more, so drivers can't veer into the paint so easily before they get past him. And there were fewer lanes for the Thunder. I think that's part of their passing, but I think that stuff is just better execution more so than any real tactical shift from the Pacers.
Yeah, I thought that it was better execution in terms of blowing up screens and fighting over screens. Also, that they were excellent at tag and recover stuff in this game where they were able to show somebody at the elbow or at the nail or in the mid-paint on J-Dub and Shea, then still fly out and contest a 3, and then have another guy on the back line. You look at the Lou Dort triples, and for the Thunder, it's really discouraging to go 0-2 in the 2 games that Lou shot the ball well. But some of the 3s he made, he got a flyby, and yet there's another pacer on his shot and in contest.
That rainbow left corner 3 was the prettiest jump shot I've ever seen in my life. That was the most perfect swish it was unbelievable. It was perfect. It was unreal. And you've watched Caitlin Clark switch in plenty of 3s in that building. So a pretty jump shot when you see one. I think that Lou did a great job of still making that, but those shots were not just conceded. I think that sometimes
whenever we're just dissecting like then that game 3 preview of how to stop Shea, we view it as like, oh, well, get the ball to Shea's hands and kind of forget about it. No, the Pacers got the ball to Shea's hands and then still played great defense on top of that to the Thunder's role players, and that really hurt them.
Let's talk about this bench shift that came the way for the Pacers and kind of for the Thunder too. A lot of bench points went from one team to the other from game 3 to game 4, or from game 2 to game 3. Whoops. Before we do that, got to talk about OLIPOP. It's a new kind of soda made for people who love the classic taste but want something that supports their health with just 2 to 5 grams of sugar and 9 grams of prebiotic fiber in every can. OLIPOP is reimagining soda in a way that's better for your gut. Traditional sodas loaded with sugar, 39 grams in regular Coke, 44 grams in an orange Fanta. OLIPOP flips that script with just a fraction of the sugar, no artificial sweeteners, and gut-friendly ingredients like OliSmart, a blend shown to support digestive and overall health. It's soda that tastes like the real thing, but actually does something good for your body. I love it. I've drank it for forever. I have a crisp apple literally right here. Rylan also is an OLIPOP consumer, a cream soda fan himself. I have many of those in my house right now as well. Whatever flavor you like, there's a ton that are good. If it actually supports your health, that's the way to do it, right? Make soda healthy, especially when it tastes just as good, if not better. Swapping out for that regular soda helps you cut back on sugar while chasing those nostalgic flavors that you love. Get a free can of OLIPOP. Just buy any 2 cans in the store. They'll reimburse you for one. Head to drinkolipop.com/LockedOnNBA to claim your free can and find OLIPOP near you. That's drinkolipop.com/LockedOnNBA. Back here crossing it over on Locked On Pacers and Locked On Thunder. I'm Tony East hosting Locked On Pacers. He's Rylan Stiles, the close of Locked On Thunder. Check out Locked On Knicks for your second listen, because by the time you hear me talking, they've probably requested to interview Mark Daigneault or Rick Carlisle and been firmly rejected by those two teams. Who's left for the Knicks to keep trying? I'll give them credit. You want good established coaches, go get it. It does look quite funny to see this news cycle keep happening over and over. Rylan, the bench for the Thunder, Aaron Wiggins, Alex Caruso was awesome in game 2. In game 3, the Pacers bench was just sensational. That was my first segment of a finals game, was running through the Bennedict Mathurin dominance, the TJ McConnell, the perfect TJ McConnell game. The steals on the inbounds, the flip shots that everyone's like, wait, a 6'1" guy just made that? 5 assists. Actually able to get in the lane against a good Thunder defense. And Obi Toppin, who just has this gazelle-y, jumpy pace element add to the game that the Thunder don't really have on their team. They all were great, and that made the Pacers able to play deep and for long. What did you notice in the bench flip from game 2 to 3?
I thought that it was a more comfortable bench unit for Indiana, an uncomfortable one for Oklahoma City, but it does come down to the paint. I mean, the Thunder did not protect the paint at anywhere close to the level you have to win an NBA Finals game, and Indiana did. And so you mentioned that, like Ben Mathurin, who I thought, did not just hit, open shots. I thought he hit some very, very difficult shots, especially at the rim, especially through contact. And it's like the Thunder didn't have guys to do that. The Thunder didn't have guys who were able to play with force the way that Indiana did. They did not have, TJ really pulled an out Caruso, like where he just came in and immediately sets a tone and flips the script of the tenor of the game, especially with his hustle and defensive ability. And you mentioned the rim finishing, which Caruso's been good at for the Thunder overall, but not in this series, not in this game for OKC. So I thought that the bench was a big deciding factor, just like we thought, Tony, before the series, where we were saying that one of the big X factors and one of the big reasons that either team will win is who has more moments from this bench. Like, who can you look back on and say, oh, that was the so-and-so game. And right now, Indiana's had more of those moments, and they've had, Ben Mathurin, who, if they win a championship and they hold on to this series lead, he'll never have to pay for anything in the rest of his life in Indiana, as long as he lives. So, credit to him. But yeah, I thought that the bench scoring completely flipped, both numerically, but also in the comfort and the force that they played with.
Yeah, that Mathurin game was just special. Like, he's the only guy on the team that can do a lot of stuff that he did in that game. And a lot of times the Pacers don't like, it's not that they don't want that. They just don't like the way they play. It doesn't require it. They needed it in that game. He was awesome. And McConnell just like I want to ask you this kind of generically. Like, I know that I've done the story on it. I've asked a billion people on both teams, what makes the Thunder rim protection so good, right? How is this so possible? Is there any type of non-star player who can routinely bust into the Thunder paint and actually make plays? Because McConnell, for all the warts in his game, like, it felt like it could be a tough series for him. Non-shooter against that defense, has to have the ball out. Good luck. But he is the only guy, I guess Mathurin in game 3 too, but like he can get in there. He doesn't always have a good angle to shoot, but like he's getting in the paint every single time. Is that actually a Thorn thing? What's going on there?
Yeah, I think that's just a TJ McCollum thing. I think that he's the only one who's able to do it. The Thunder's defense has been predicated on swarming the ball once you get near a paint touch and forcing the ball out to the perimeter where it's a more volatile shot to where sometimes you get burned by it, but other times the ball just rims out on you. You miss the open three and away you go on the other end if you're OKC. But TJ has been excellent at probing the lane. Now, again, sometimes he doesn't have the shot lane like you mentioned. Sometimes the numbers aren't there for him to go up with it, but he's been able to get his way into the paint, which is a tough task. And that's why you haven't seen it done a ton. Not only do the Thunder swarm very well, but they have such active hands and disciplined hands to where they pick their spots properly of when to swipe at the ball, oftentimes producing turnovers. And TJ has not let that happen. And I think that TJ played with the most grit and heart and all the stuff that you love to talk about of anyone on the court, and it paid off for him.
The snarl, what other words do you have to describe this, right? Yeah, we've gone through this.
Moxie.
Moxie. Dogging him, right? Butler Blue was tweeting about him. I don't know if you know the Butler mascot well, but
wow.
Yeah, Butler Blue was hyped about the TJ McConnell performance. The thing that made his drives more effective in this game was not even something he did. When he'd get in deep and the Thunder would swarm him like low towards the baseline, they would cut. And they got a lot of baskets just on a well-timed into space cut. And we both talked about that as like take the space if the Thunder are going to leave open space because of how much they're storming the ball. Take it. And Mathurin did well with that. And Siakam did well with that. Toppin did well with that. And they got a lot of easier shots just close to the rim by cutting on those drives and forcing the Thunder to react to that. And if the cut wasn't there, great. Someone behind the three-point line has to now be open. Like, it's not an easy pass, but someone's open. So I thought the bench did such a good job of disrupting the typical rhythm and challenges that had been facing the Pacers in a way that was so meaningful. And obviously the Stars were just fantastic. J-Dub, how often can he just do this like line drive to the rim, cut across the lane, flip it in shot thing? Because I don't recall seeing him do that very much. And I think he had a bunch of those in this game. And that seems like a wrinkle that the Thunder would like to have be very consistent, because then you don't have to rely on Shea as much.
Yeah, that's something that is totally in his bag that he does often to generate production whenever he is producing, but it's something that has to gain consistency, especially in big moments against great teams. And in stages such as this one, he's an inconsistent player right now, which is expected as a third-year guy, and that's why the conversation around this Thunder team has been what it has been for the length of this season. Is, are they too young? Are they ready for the moment? And I think that the inconsistencies game to game, but also within the course of the game from Chet and from J-Dub give some credence to that. I think that in the third quarter you saw J-Dub play with great physicality. I mean, like, how many times did you see him not only just run his way to the rim, but boulder his way to the rim with his shoulder and create separation, and
with Neesmith on him too.
Yeah, and properly utilize his frame to free himself up. Like, he's still the one area where J-Dub has to grow this summer, whether they win the title or not, is going to be the understanding of just how big he is going to the rim and being able to put his body into defenders. And that's something that Shea has mastered. It's something that J-Dub has to get better at. But yeah, he certainly can do it. And for the Thunder to come back in this series, he's going to have to do it from here on out. But the third quarter could lead to a spark in his game, and it has to for OKC.
So that was a huge stretch and a huge thing. Like him being their leading scorer, I thought, oh man, like I'm going to keep that in the back of my mind if Shea gets going a little better or just cuts his turnovers down in the next game, that they had someone else who was just that effective and impressive. And he was special in a way that, especially going against Neesmith, that I was like, oh man, like that's going to be damaging potentially going forward. He was quite good, which also stood out to me because outside of Dort hitting his threes, like no one else in the Thunder really was like, whoa, like look at that. Like Wiggins was in game 2, or like Caruso was in game 2, or like Hartenstein has been at times on the glass throughout the series, although he was not very good in this game. And that was very meaningful to me. And that brings me to a point I want to make in our third segment, Rylan. Should Cason Wallace really still be starting for the Thunder? Existential questions required? I don't know. Let's talk about it here in just a second. But before we do that, we got to talk about FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. The finals are rocking, and FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, same-game parlays, and so much more. Fans have more ways than ever So play smart and win big. Who do you think is going to show up in these big moments? How could tracking their trends help you build your next big bet? And what would it look like if you combined live prop bets mid-game based on how the action unfolds? Well, if you've got a read on who's heating up, why not back it up with a same-game parlay and $200 in bonus bets? Could add to the excitement if your first $5 bet hits. So if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, ka-ching, you get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Back here on Locked On Pacers and Locked On Thunder. Thanks for making both of us your first listen every single day during the NBA Finals. Make the other show your second listen, or when we do crossovers like this. I already said Locked On Knicks, so Locked On Suns. Kevin Durant now becoming the classic ESPN pregame guy to talk about with his trades. We got 5 destinations, but there's also some wild cards, so who cares about the destinations? What's actually going to happen? Who knows? Maybe Shams knows. The draft will tell all. The draft, Rylan. I can't believe it. It's June 12th. I haven't done a single draft podcast. It's crazy. These teams still playing this deep into the season. Look, it was not stunning to me that Hartenstein got pulled from the starting 5 before the series, but I continue, and I mentioned this to you after game 1, I continue to wonder if it should be Caruso instead of Wallace. They're playing Caruso more anyway. What say you about these Thunder lineup choices? And I recently saw some chatter about, belief in like a team principle that they even changed the starting 5 before the series started. You didn't think they would do that because of exactly that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that Kaysen in the starting 5 has not been the issue to cause them to lose game 1 and now game 3. I think that if you do want to make some tweaks, it could look something similar to what the Thunder did against Minnesota, where they started, the double bigs against Minnesota, but first stoppage, they go to single big. And sometimes even before the first stoppage, they go to single big. So for the example used yesterday, I would have said that after that 15-6 start, you're feeling pretty good. You have the Rick Carlisle timeout, and you know that the Pacers are going to respond. How about injecting Caruso into that lineup right then and there, and having the same starting 5 out there, just having Caruso in place of Kaysen Wallace. Like that's an area where the Thunder can alter their rotation, kind of alter whenever they're going to deploy some of these guys. But overall, to me, the starters have not been the problem. I think that before the series, we talked about how difficult it would be to play the Thunder's double big lineup against the best lineups from Indiana. I think that you're seeing why. It's because even this historically great defense, with their best defenders on the court and having more perimeter defenders, it's hard to shut down this Indiana offense. Even when they're not shooting the ball well, they're still able to get it done. So you can only imagine the open looks that they would concede if they were playing double bigs. So I don't think the starting lineup is the main reason that they're losing or even close to it, even though it's one of the first things you can look at. I think that they could stand to alter their rotation. Another way would be Kenrich Williams. Like, look, if you're not going to score anyway, if you're going to labor to get clean shots even, might as well put Kenrich Williams in there who can really mix it up and has a level of dog, as you would say, that other guys on this team do not have, and can help you on the defensive end.
It's hard to take minutes away from anyone who is playing on the Thunder, which is why tweaks are hard. And to be clear about what I'm saying, because I think you know this, but for anyone else, I don't think the specific 5 players starting for the Thunder, like that lineup together, has been bad. I just wonder when you look at the minutes distribution, if they would think about like, hey, just start the game with the guy who's playing more often and playing pretty well. But you have been on this all series, and it happened in game 2. Like Caruso just injects life into games, right? That's what McConnell and Toppin did in game 3, and then Mathurin obviously slammed the door with those bench groups, and that does matter. I just continue to wonder, especially because they changed it so quickly to open the series, if they'll ever tweak things. But I think you're probably right that just a generic and general rotation shift or mindset shift or whatever it may take from the Thunder might make more sense. What else about game 3 stood out to you? I know a lot of chatter about the turnover numbers for OKC, a lot of stuff about the Pacers, like their stars were much better. Anything else that you thought we should discuss while we're together?
Yeah, I think that the turnovers are a big deal because these are 2 guys in J-Dub and Shea who, while they're not these jaw-dropping playmakers and passers, they have protected the ball exceptionally well for the usage rate that they have. I mean, it's been 2 turnovers or less every game that you can just write it down. And to have this monstrosity number from those 2 guys specifically, they have to change that. They have to find ways to protect the basketball. And then you wonder with J-Dub, who's been dealing with a wrist injury for the majority of this last half of the season, including all of the playoffs, like how much is that hurting his handle? Because he's never been a guy who, with his handle, can create advantages for himself and create separation. But he's also never been a guy who, with his handle, is susceptible to turnovers the way that Chet is. So I think that whenever you look at those 2 guys, they have to protect the ball a lot better and be tighter with their handles and not just give the ball away. And if that changes, then it opens the door for at least more opportunities to score. And like, if you're going to have to hit tough shots anyway, you can't then surrender the chance to even try a tough shot by giving it away. So the Thunder have to clean up the turnovers, and they have to clean up their poise. I mean, like, this is a team that has not played in clutch games this season. They have a historically low rate of clutch games this year. And this is an Indiana team. Yeah, because they're so good. This is an Indiana team that has played almost exclusively clutch games this season, has been deep in the playoffs twice now, compared to the Thunder, who were a second-round exit last year and now have made this deep run. The Pacers in their 2 wins have just looked like the more comfortable team in the fourth quarters. I mean, going 6 for 10 from 3 on the road in the fourth quarter, and what they did in game 1 was sensational to have the Thunder blow that lead. And then last night, the Thunder had the momentum at the end of quarter 3. It didn't matter. I mean, Indiana was the team under control. You had your 30-year-old veteran literally just handing the ball to TJ off the inbound, like making a mistake that just cannot happen in the NBA Finals. So the poise has to change too.
How many ex-champions or finalists even do the Thunder have? I haven't dove into this. Caruso, obviously.
It's Caruso.
That's it?
That's it.
Yeah, he played a major role, so that counts. Like, I think Siakam's influence on the Pacers' poise is so noticeable all the time. Like, that dude plays the same way and is mentally strong pretty much all the time in these games. And like, it always means, like, Thomas Bryant's a champion. You can never take that away from him. Like,
can't. Don't you dare try. And you know what? Great news for Indiana. Last 7 NBA title winners have had a Washington Wizard on it. Indiana's the only team in this series with Wizards, so... 2
former Wizards, Quentin Jackson and Thomas Bryant. Yeah,
there you go.
That has started to spread. Someone said that to me last. I don't want to spoil his job title, but a Gamebridge employee, I'll say, mentioned that to me last night. I thought that was quite funny. I can't believe that's spreading so much. You need Thomas Bryant. You need Quentin Jackson.
I think it also matters too of just like Rick. I mean, Rick's been in 6 finals.
Oh man. Yeah.
Like. That being the leader of your team is big. And this Thunder team is an experience. And I know that people don't want to hear it because they were the favorites entering this series. We both think that some of the favorite thing, like, it was obviously overblown. Like the amount that they were favored by.
Which they were favorites was
overblown. Like that was overblown. Are they the favorites? Yes. Should it have been minus like 700? No. But still, they were the overwhelming favorites. And so that kind of shades perception. But it is a real thing. And it's a real thing even for, okay, if you have 2 teams who only have 1 champion each, that's an actual contributor, all due respect to Thomas Bryant, then from there, who on the court has their version of experience? And for Indiana, they have their version of tight game experience, and the Thunder don't.
And that's part of why I've talked about Rick so much, and part of why before the series, when you and I did predictions, I completely copped out and said, like, it's the finals, dude. Like, you just don't know how this moment's going to change things. I'm not even saying that is why the Pacers are winning, is because it's the moment of the finals right now. Like, you just don't know who will shrink, who will rise, how it's going to look. And guess what? By the end of the series, it could look opposite of what it does right now in terms of who's done that. But it just changed. Like, you were there in the post-game presser. Didn't Shea mention something about the crowd? Like, that Obi Toppin putback was the loudest I've heard Gamebridge. The OKC crowd was insane. Like, it's just different. The last thing I would touch on from Game 3 is the Pacers got star stuff from both their stars for the first time this series. Siakam was terrific in Game 1, and Haliburton had the shot, obviously, but he was like, throughout that game. They were both very good. And this one, Siakam is just crushing every small that gets put on him. There's not really anything the Thunder can do about that if they start the 4 guards, because J-Dub is their second biggest player. And Haliburton finally found space to wiggle and make floaters and be more Haliburton-y. I don't think the Thunder can let both of them have that kind of game, because the rest of the starters weren't even that good, and the Pacers still won. So there's got to be some more resistance to those 2 next game from OKC in some way. And I would imagine it comes in the way of finding solutions for Siakam versus Smalls, because that's been the biggest thorn in their side for most of the series.
Yeah, that's got to get better. And also, like, their coverages of Haliburton have to be executed better. Like, I don't even mind. The thing I do mind is, like, dying on screens. That just can't happen. That's not who the Thunder have been all season long. You just cannot do that. But whenever you get over the screen on Haliburton and you still are a step behind the 3-point line against him, I don't even mind that so much, because you would feel like you're athletic enough to close out on him before he can release his shot, just due to the nature of his jump shot. But the Thunder were both. They were under the screen and too far away from Haliburton, and also flat-footed and not closing out to Haliburton to close that space. And then that's where they got into a lot of trouble against Tyrese in Game 3. So that has to change as well. And if you're Indiana, like, we kind of do this thing where in the midst of series, we split them up into individual games. Like, okay, what's the task at hand now? If you're Indiana, the task at hand right now is to win one of the next two. You win one of the next two, you win the series. And so like that's kind of the bottom line. OKC has to win game 4 and they have to win game 5 at home. And that's a lot of pressure to put on this team.
Yeah, it's crazy. The second win feels different in a final setting. Like one win's like, okay, here you go. The second one's like, oh. So that's what I wonder what game 4 will look like. A lot of chatter today about how one day off instead of 2 will matter, which is hilarious because these are the two teams I think the most impervious to the time off actually mattering to their success in the whole playoffs with their depth and pace. We'll see if that plays any part tomorrow. I don't think it will, which is why I didn't even bring it up. Rylan, we're crushing. We'll be back chatting again on Saturday night, I'm sure, after game 4 tomorrow. And I'm sure I'll let you tell the people that we'll both have a show after game 4 on Friday.
We will for sure both have a show after game 4 on Friday. I'll be in the Tony East legacy seat recording the pod yet again. So that'll be a lot of fun in Gamebridge Fieldhouse. And it was a great time. So I'm excited for it. Did
you see me go across to the same spot on the other side from you to record mine?
I did. I
kept leaning and being like, Rylan's right there, but I couldn't see it. We had it going down. Yes, after game 4 on Locked On Pacers as well. And then it's back to Oklahoma we go, Mr. Stiles. It will be fun. The finals are rocking. 2 teams playing their way and trying to win a championship. Thank you all so much for listening today. You can find me on Twitter at Tony R. East and Rylan at Rylan_Stiles. Back tomorrow talking more NBA Finals. Thanks for listening. See you then.